Hi there, everybody, and welcome back. We are going to be hearing a story today that often has a song that goes with it. And if I even say the name of the main character other than Jesus in this story, I bet you'll know the song already. It starts with a Z, and it's not Zorro. And it's not Zelda, and it's not Zoe, and it's not Zerubbabel, and it's, I think, well, I'll give you a hint. It's about a man who was kind of short, apparently, and he was a tax collector. Remember we talked about tax collectors not too long ago when we talked about Matthew and about some of the things that they would do when they would overcharge people and keep the money, the extra money for themselves. Kind of like when you go to the store, if you don't give your parents the change, that kind of thing. Not a good thing to do. Anyway, back to the Z guy. His name was Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus, he was, as I say, a tax collector. And he lived in the city of Jericho. He was very rich. Jericho was a busy city, and many people came to sell all sorts of handmade things. Their pottery, they'd sell clothes, they'd sell food, they'd sell animals, all sorts of things. And every time they went back and forth along the road with their goods, they had to pay taxes to Zacchaeus. And a lot of people who wanted to worship God passed along through the market as they were on their way to the temple, and that were going in and out of town to get to Jerusalem. Zacchaeus would probably have collected money from them too. And he made his living, and far more than his living, by collecting far more than he was owed. Here he is. Here's a picture of him counting the money, and he's scooping the coins off the table and putting them into the purse at the side. And there he is. He's got a fancy necklace on. You can see under his beard, made of pearls. And the people that are at the counter there, they're just trying to pay what they have, and he doesn't care. He's just taking the money. And the people knew that he took more money than he was owed, and they did not like that. They were not happy about it at all. But one day, Jesus and his disciples, including Matthew, another tax collector, they also arrived in Jericho. And when people heard that they were coming, they got all excited and they were really happy about it. And they lined up around the gate waiting to see what Jesus would look like when he arrived, and to say hello and to find out what was going on. Here you can see people sort of gathering around and waiting. It's like when, have you ever been around when a baseball player is coming out of the stadium and people are there with the ball and they want to get him to sign his name on the ball, or sometimes they'll have a bat and they'll ask him to autograph the bat. It was kind of like that. But it was Jesus, and he was making his way through the crowds trying to get where he was going, and people were there. Hey, I see him. Problem, Zacchaeus, he was curious too, and he wanted to see what was happening, and I know you have had this problem. He was too short to see what was going on with all the tall people in front of him. When you're a kid, that's a constant thing. It happens all the time. That's why at a parade, people push the kids up to the curb so that they can see from the curb when they can't see from the sidewalk. But Zacchaeus wasn't a kid, and nobody liked him, so they weren't going to say, "Here, Zacchaeus, you go in front of me." No, they weren't going to do him any favors. So he went and he found a tree, and he climbed up the tree so he could look out over people's heads and see Jesus. Well, as Jesus was coming along, and as he was making his way through the crowd, he looked up and he saw the tree that had Zacchaeus looking over everybody's heads. And he looked up and he saw Zacchaeus in the tree. And it was kind of funny because, you're used to seeing a kid climb a tree, but it's really unusual to see somebody over, say, 25 climbing a tree, at least in public. They do it anyway. They just don't let anybody see. And as you get older and you get heavier, you can't get as high because the branches get weighed down. Trust me, you don't want to do it. But when you're a kid, yeah, you can still do it. But Zacchaeus, he didn't care. He wanted to see Jesus. So he climbed up in this tree, and Jesus looks and he sees Zacchaeus in the tree, and he shouts at him. He says, "Hey, Zacchaeus!" So I guess he knew who it was too. Jesus knows a lot of what's going on, and always did. And it's a good thing he does, because when he saw Zacchaeus, he shouted to him and he said, "Hey, Zacchaeus, get down here!" Why? Well, he came down, and people got a little up in arms because they knew Zacchaeus wasn't such a great person. And here was Jesus. Was he going to tell him off? Was he going to tell him exactly what everybody thought about him? And when he got down there, what Jesus said was, "I'm coming to your house for supper. Let's go." They did. He took the time and he made friends with Zacchaeus. And he sat down, and nobody understood why he was doing this, but Jesus went to Zacchaeus' house anyway, and they sat down and they had supper together, maybe with a few other people. But you know what? Jesus was the one person that would be friends with the person that nobody else would be friends with. And it made a big difference. Because at the end of their time together, at the end of the visit, Zacchaeus looked at Jesus and he said, "You know what? I need to do something to apologize to a lot of people." And he went and he got his money and he started giving it back to the people he had taken it from. And probably couldn't find all of them, but the ones he could, he tried to make it up to them. Sometimes just saying you're sorry, it's a good start, but sometimes you have to show you're sorry too. And he did that. Jesus made a big difference in his life just by being friends with him. And Jesus can help us when we're friends with him too, and help us to make up with other people. And that's really important. So think about it. Who is that person that nobody else can stand, but maybe you can stand long enough to find out who they really are? Or if you're that person, maybe spend some time with Jesus and let him change you. A lot to think about, isn't it? Well, use some time tomorrow to think about it, and then I'll catch up with you afterward, okay? Good night.